The night her ex walked through my front door, she didn't even flinch, just sighed like I was the inconvenience for noticing something wrong. And in that second I realized everything I thought I knew about my relationship was already gone before I even caught up to it. She just said, "Relax, it's not a big deal," while he stood there like he belonged in my home, like the space I paid for, lived in, and built with her had somehow already been rewritten without my permission. And I remember staring at him thinking this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. This was a continuation of something I was never included in. We had been together almost 2 years, and for the last 8 months she lived with me in my apartment, where life felt stable in a quiet, predictable way. Morning coffee she always made too sweet, late night scrolling while I worked overtime emails, weekends where she'd call her sister for an hour while I cleaned up or ordered food. We talked about future plans like moving somewhere bigger, getting a dog, even joked about names. And she used to look at me like I was safe, like I was home, and that's why when she first said, "You've got nothing to worry about," I believed her without question. It started small, her ex texting her, something she mentioned casually one evening while cooking like it was nothing more than a harmless update from a distant memory. She said, "He just wanted to check in," and when I asked if it bothered her she shrugged and said, "We're done, that part of my life is over." And I wanted to be the kind of man who trusts instead of doubts, so I didn't push, didn't ask to see messages, didn't interrogate what I told myself was irrelevant history. But then his name kept appearing in small, almost invisible ways, her phone lighting up with a name she'd flip face down instantly, her smiling faintly at messages she wouldn't explain, and once I joked, "He must be really funny," and she laughed too quickly, saying, "He's just going through stuff, I'm being nice," like kindness explained away familiarity. The first crack I truly ignored was a Thursday when she said she was going out with coworkers for a birthday, but when I texted later asking if she was coming home soon she replied, "Yeah, wrapping up," while her shared location showed her across town in a place she never mentioned, and when she came home I asked casually, "Different place than you said?" And she didn't even hesitate before replying, "Plans changed, you're overthinking." And I remember nodding like I accepted it while something inside me quietly stopped trusting my own comfort. After that, it was all patterns. Late calls she took in another room, laughter I didn't recognize cut short the moment I entered, her phone always angled away from me like it had secrets, and once I saw a notification flash when she stepped out of the shower that simply read his name followed by, "I miss," before it disappeared, and when she came back I asked, "Are we okay?" And she kissed my cheek saying, "Of course we are." Like reassurance could erase behavior. I finally asked directly one night while washing dishes, trying to keep my tone neutral, "Are you still talking to him?" And she sighed like I was exhausting her, saying, "Yeah, sometimes, why is that such a big deal?" And when I said, "It wouldn't be unless you were hiding something," she looked me dead in the eye and said, "There's nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about," and that phrase started to feel less like comfort and more like control. The tension didn't explode, it just thickened. Silences stretching longer, conversations shrinking into fragments, until one evening there was a knock at the door and she said, "Can you get that?" without looking up from her phone, and when I opened it he was standing there like he had rehearsed the moment, calm, familiar, and he said, "Hey," like he was stepping into somewhere he'd already been invited before, and I turned back slowly asking, "You want to explain why your ex is at my door?" And she sighed again, standing up like I was overreacting to weather. "I told you he might stop by," she said, and I replied instantly, "No, you didn't," while he walked in uninvited like my silence was permission, saying, "This doesn't have to be weird," and I laughed because it already was. I looked at her and asked, "What is this?" and she crossed her arms saying, he needed to talk, and I felt something inside me drop when I realized this wasn't surprise. It was coordination I was never part of. Then he said it plainly, "We've been trying to figure things out," and I asked, "Figure what out?" Even though I already knew, and she finally said quietly, "Us," like the word didn't just erase me from my own life. I asked her, "You mean you and him?" And she nodded, adding, "It's complicated," and I said, "No, it's not complicated. It's just dishonest," and she looked away instead of denying it. That was when I stopped arguing and started seeing clearly. She hadn't been ending anything, she had been balancing 2 lives, and I was the one she expected to stay steady while she decided. I asked her, "So what was I then?" "A backup plan," and she said, "I didn't know what I wanted," like uncertainty excused everything, while he stood there quietly watching the fallout of something I had unknowingly been part of. I packed a bag right there, slow and controlled, while she kept saying, "You don't have to leave," and I finally looked at her and said, "It's my place, but I don't stay where I'm an option," and that shut the room down more than any argument could. He suddenly looked less confident, like he realized he wasn't stepping into a victory but into damage, and I told her, "You can stay tonight, but by tomorrow you're both out of my space," and when she said, "You're overreacting," I answered, "No, I'm just reacting once instead of slowly breaking every day. I walked out that night into cold air that felt cleaner than the apartment behind me, stayed with a friend, ignored her messages as they shifted from defensive to apologetic to desperate. I messed up. I didn't think you'd leave. I chose wrong. But I didn't respond because there was nothing to debate anymore. When I returned days later, the apartment was stripped of her things, and on the counter was a note that said, "I didn't think you'd walk away so easily," and I remember folding it without anger, just clarity, because that line told me everything. I wasn't supposed to walk away. I was supposed to stay confused, available, and waiting. It's been months now, and what I learned isn't about betrayal being loud or dramatic, but about how quietly it can be normalized until you're the only one not in on it. Trust matters, but so does noticing when someone keeps telling you not to worry while acting in ways that require you to ignore your own instincts. And I didn't lose her the night he walked in. I just finally stopped losing myself.